I'm Todd Bookspan, and welcome to your neighborhood real estate show. The hyperlocal real estate show where real estate professionals talk about the neighborhood you live in or the neighborhood you want to live in. This episode is brought to you by homebuyeruniversity.net, your free comprehensive guide to buying or refinancing your home. Click over to homebuyeruniversity.net to get started online today. Hey everyone, I'm Todd Bookspan and welcome to another episode of Your Neighborhood Real Estate Show. I am super excited today to talk about 85383 in Flagstaff with Cheryl Benjamin.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, so we're going to talk about a lot today, so I'm pretty excited about this, and we're going to do our best to make it less than 3 hours for everyone listening. So,
perfect.
So someone who doesn't know who Cheryl Benjamin is, give a little background on you and how you got in this business.
All right. Well, I'm originally from Michigan, and my husband and I moved out here in 2002. I was bartending and going to school for engineering at the time, and he was like, you know what? I think you should try real estate. I'm in the loan side of things. I think he'd be great at it. So I went and got my real estate license, and that was 17 years ago.
Look at that. I think everyone who's an engineer should become a real estate.
Right, me too. Well, I was in Calc 3 and physics at the same time, and I'm like, listen, this is a lot of work. And needless to say, now I don't have to do that kind of math anymore.
I don't think most people do. Like algebra, I haven't used it too often lately.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit.
Yeah.
But that's all good.
My kids are 6 and 8, so I feel like I'll be coming into that math again and hopefully be able to teach them, but we'll see.
That's perfect. If not, I got a daughter's a math teacher, so she can help.
There you go.
All right, so you got into real estate and you work with your husband. So you run the Loving Phoenix team.
Correct.
Right, lovingphoenix.com. And so it's got to be kind of fun to work with your husband. So kind of talk about how you guys expanded the business. I know you've got a team of 10 now.
Yep. We started out originally, I was doing BPOs in 2010, 2011.
That's a broker price opinion. That's just like an appraisal for a bank.
Glorified appraisal. Yep, exactly. So I did a substantial amount of those, about 1,200. And at the time, I was working by myself and going to school, finishing up my healthcare administration degree. Don't ask. I don't use it, so thankfully it's paid for. So I was doing all the work, and he was like, hey, we should reach out to these banks and see if they'll give you more if I start working with you. So that's what we did. And then he, on the side, read the book for dummies on how to start a website. And that's where it all began. And then since then, we've grown because he was generating so much business for me to work. I couldn't do it all on my own. Initially, we started at a referral basis where we were just handing it off to different agents. Hard to manage your reputation and everything along with that if you don't actually have a team with your own core values and everything else that everybody needs to follow.
Yeah, absolutely. I think oftentimes people are scared. They're like, oh, I have to work with Cheryl. But you guys have done such a great job of training your agents to follow a process. That's the process that is going to provide a great client experience.
And the core values that we have at our team, it's very important that they align with me because my reputation is really all I have.
Yeah, and it's kind of an interesting market right now. So, buyers are coming to you. Kind of, what are the fears? How are you guys talking to buyers right now in this market?
Well, for a buyer, I'm excited. I mean, I know that everybody wants to talk about the rates. I think more so the younger generation is concerned about that because they don't know what a high rate truly is. Rates, I think, are obviously they go up, they go down. But at this point, I'm just talking to buyers about the win-win situation that they can put themselves in now. They can walk away from buying a home, not feeling forced like this is their only option, and we get to negotiate again. So
it's so funny, and I think that's where experience pays off.
Right.
It's interesting to me when I talk to a realtor who's been in the business for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. They don't really understand negotiation. No. They were able oh, let me pay more and let me keep paying more, and having that type of conversation. They understood. Okay, as a buyer, you're going to have to give away the farm, possibly your firstborn. But if you want this house, and I know it's not your favorite one, but if you want this house, we have to go for it. We have to give everything. We have to throw everything at it. Well, back in 2018, we actually got to say, hey, your house is great, but we don't want to pay full price for it. And oh, by the way, we're going to ask you for $5,000 in seller concessions, $10,000, whatever it is. And right now, we can actually ask for seller concessions and buy down the rate. Yeah, I mean, I think that's the real key. There's, either a permanent buy down or like a temporary, like a 2-1 buy down is a great option. And so I think it's really important for buyers to hear that from someone like yourself because I still think there's a lot of fear. And we've been just talking to people about marry the house but date the rate. Certainly I have no crystal ball of where rates are going, but 100% of the time that we've had a recession, interest rates have gone down afterwards.
Absolutely.
So that's sort of the expectation.
And inflation's down to 8.3, so we're on our way.
Yeah,
we are. Woo. I know. Imagine that. We are at around 20,000 homes if you count the ones that are under contract and pending. So we haven't seen these days since, 2017, 2016. Buyers have options. And sellers, it's time to do the work.
Yeah, so let's talk about sellers then for a minute. Like, it seems to me, like in my neighborhood, like there's kind of a dividing line of one street, and on one side of the street where there's big trees and it's different looking, the last few houses I've literally sold the first weekend on the market, priced appropriately in my mind. And then on the other side of the road, priced a little bit higher, not the cool trees and stuff, and they've been sitting for a month or so. And so it seems like there's maybe different advice being given on both sides of the road.
I think we need to prepare the sellers now for your 7 days on market and under contract and closing in 35 from start to finish. Those days are behind us, and I think we need to prepare people for a longer experience, maybe an escrow for 60 to 90 days, or not maybe an escrow, but from list date to closing date, as long as you're doing the right things to prepare your home for showings, because now people aren't just willing to take whatever's on the market. I mean, they want something that's move-in ready, minimal amount of work. If you're looking at an air conditioning unit that's, refrigerants R22, they're including that in the cost of what it's going to, cost them to own that house for the next 5 years.
Right. So really, it's got to be updated,
right?
Look good, got to clear your junk out, right? I mean, what do you talk to someone about when they got borderline hoarder syndrome?
I talk to them about a storage unit.
Yeah.
And how I can get them to help, I'm a resource. So I definitely have somebody for everything. So we can help them get movers and get some of their items into a storage unit and preparing it in regards to fresh paint, new flooring. I mean, these are set expectations of the buyers in today's market.
Yeah, I think it's so critical to hear that, because I think that's, when I talk to someone and they're scared of selling their home, but I think part of it is that they just don't know they're not getting that kind of advice.
And I think people also need to realize that homes aren't depreciating. We just aren't appreciating at 30% anymore. So, 12% is still a great appreciation rate. I don't think we're going to be able to sustain it. But with where our, economy is going and everything, I think we will settle down in the next 6 months to a year and maybe hover right next to inflation, which will likely come back down to 5 to 7%. And that's a healthy real estate market.
Well, I think you nailed it, right? It's something that most agents, I don't think, are aware of, is that, right, appreciation oftentimes is in line with inflation.
Right.
I think that Arizona's been fortunate that we've continued to have great appreciation.
But even so, at 12.5% of appreciation rate in Phoenix proper, that's great. That's still fantastic. And so the fear that sellers are getting right now with, I just need to sell and get the highest price. Well, make sure it's price, location, and condition are what's going to sell your home every time. So if you don't have one of those, you better blow the other two out of the water.
I love that. It makes me kind of smile, because I talked to someone yesterday and she's like, oh yeah, my house has been on the market for 60 days. And now they're getting ready to do a price drop of $100,000 than what it was originally on the market for, which tells me they were missing something, probably the price at that point. It's too high at the start. Yeah.
If you're backing up to Central or, 7th Avenue or something, you're going to have to make sure you're pricing it right, because that's not necessarily the most ideal home for somebody.
Yeah, so I think that my takeaway always is don't have fear, just make sure you're getting the best advice.
Right, buy a real estate advisor. And it doesn't necessarily have to be an agent that's been selling for 20 years or 17 years like myself. It could be somebody that's been selling for only 2 to 3 years. Just make sure that you're checking out their reputation online. It's easy to do that. Google reviews, Zillow reviews, anything like that. And you're working with a true professional. Ask a lot of questions.
Yeah, well, so what are a couple of good questions someone should ask?
I would ask somebody, if I was selling and I was interviewing agents, I would want to know about their reputation. That would be my number one thing. I'd want to know about how many transactions they've done over the last 24 months, just to see if they really do have their toe in the water, or if they're just, listening to our our real estate advisors and then kind of pretending to do real estate every 1 or 2 transactions a quarter, because those people really aren't your best option.
Yeah, it's so hard, because I never want to beat up the person who's newer and not doing as much business, but it's a business, true business. It's not a hobby, and it's where experience really matters.
And if you're selling your biggest asset, you would want to work with a professional. And so if somebody's brand new, go work on a team.
Yeah,
get all of those reviews and everything, all their reputation behind you, and then you can build your own.
Well, I think that's really key. And I think that it's, one of those things where, again, you've already said it, you've got a team, you're grooming people that are great just like you.
I really pride myself on our culture. And I think that our team, they like to come to work.
We're a good environment. That, right? They actually work. And I think it's always hard, because a lot of people have a cousin or some family member or friends, best friends of a friend that's in the business. And I always think it's just so hard, because they feel like they're crushing that person's dream by not choosing them. But oftentimes it's costing them thousands of dollars.
Thousands.
right?
Right.
You know, whether you're buying or selling, because you were the negotiation, you know, that's, I think, the biggest piece of it. And that's where experience matters.
Yeah. And that's where right now in our market today, we're back to a win-win. And that is the most beautiful experience, walking away from a transaction.
That's my favorite thing. Win-win. We all should win.
I know, right?
Yep.
Good way to live.
So let's talk about 85383 for a minute.
Yes.
So like that's your favorite zip code here in the Valley. And I'm like, all right, where is that?
Okay. So that's where I live. I've lived there for a few years now. I've always been up in the Northwest Valley to begin with. But
right, so Northwest Valley. So you fly into Sky Harbor, you're going to head north, and then you're going to head over west. Like,
Yes. If you're heading, like my drive here today, I took the I-17 to the 303 by the Taiwanese chip factory, got off on Lake Pleasant Parkway, and I'm right off of Jomax. So it's just kind of a very underdeveloped area for that whole entire stretch off of the I-17. Where the Taiwanese chip factory is, I mean, the $21 billion production that they have going there. It's just a matter of time before housing is right behind that, and then commercial will follow thereafter. I just think the biggest thing for my husband and I is we want a bigger parcel, right? We have 2 kids, 6 and 8. So we're, they're both in club soccer. We need some space.
Got to run around. Get that energy out.
We were either looking for a basement home because we're from Michigan, or we were looking for a bigger lot, and we found a big parcel, 1/2 acre, and we developed it and we love it. And the location around it, it's just a matter of time before all the commercial is going to start popping up.
Well, that's nice. And there's just other amenities. So what are some of the communities that are around 85383 that people may have heard of?
I mean, the Meadows, I think, is the biggest one. It's the community itself. I mean, they have parks everywhere, pickleball courts, all of it. And it's just a great place. Fantastic place. Schools are fantastic, high performing. We do have 3 different charter schools up there, Basis, Great Hearts, and Candeo, where my kids go. They're just fantastic education opportunities.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting because you got great education, and I think that's what people don't all know about Arizona is our charter school system is great. I mean, our public school system is not known for being great, unfortunately, but they've at least brought in charter schools, and they've done a fabulous job. And you mentioned a couple of the ones that are all over in your specific to your area, so I think that's awesome.
I mean, those are all in 85383, and literally all within like 4 or 5 miles of each other.
And I think the other part is because I've always been a Phoenix guy, and my newest house was like 70 years old, and so I've never had any of those amenities. But that's what I'm always love when I go out to an area like that is to see all those things that are planned now, so that people have a different experience. And that's where you don't really need like, oh, I've got to drive over here, drive over there, because it's all kind of there together.
Now everything's right there, right? The 4 corners, Lake Pleasant, Happy Valley, you have so many different options. We have Harumi now too, which is a win because that was a downtown Phoenix experience for us for sushi. And now it's down the street.
What's Harumi?
Oh, it's fantastic.
I don't even know that. All right.
And my husband and I can get on our little scooters and we cruise down.
Oh, look at you guys.
I know. It's like we took the Central Phoenix and moved it to suburbia.
Yeah, I love it. And I'm a little FOMO, right? A little jealous about that. I don't think we're ever going to live in a brand new community, sadly.
Well, my house was built in 2017, so everything about it is newer. It's less stress. You don't have to worry about roof repairs, AC replacements, anything like that. I mean, you have a good solid 15 years before you're really doing anything besides hot water heater, possibly.
All right. So, but you like to also escape to the north sometimes. So straight up I-17 to the north, hour 45, 2 hours?
About 2 hours and 5 minutes.
2 hours and 5 minutes. All right. So
I know. I make the drive about once a week.
Maybe I drive slower than you drive.
Since I've started making this drive consistently, I've actually calmed down quite a bit. So I feel like I've taken my normal 85 to 90 speed down to what we should be driving at 75 to 85. So, and I allow people to merge. It's a great experience now that I've been consistent with it.
It's, I can understand. I had a different experience towing a 30-foot trailer up the hill and
high stress.
Seeing, people like, putt, putt, putt.
Yeah. Especially on a windy day, it's not good.
I think no wind that day. We would have probably pulled over. But
Flagstaff has been getting an immense amount of rain this summer, which is fantastic for our water shortage. But they've been getting an immense amount of rain, and I would think that I would be able to tap into my Michigan driving abilities and drive up there. But I hydroplaned quite a few times over the last month, and it was white knuckling it.
All right, well that's going to scare people off. So let's tell them why it's exciting to get in Flagstaff. So when I think Flagstaff, I think cooler weather. I think hiking. We got Northern Arizona University, right? The lumberjacks up there. So kind of talk about, you're spending a lot of time up there. So. We are.
We were just up there last weekend for club soccer. I mean, the temperatures are fantastic right now. So in the summertime, you can do all these great outdoor activities. And then in the winter, my family and I ski. So it's just all the outdoor activities are there. It's a great downtown feel. We were up there for 4th of July, so their parade was awesome. They have such engagement with their firefighters, police officers. I mean, it's just it's a small town feel. So you feel like you're a part of something in Flagstaff.
Yeah, I kind of think community, especially, when you spend some time just walking around the downtown area.
It's fantastic.
and see what else is around. And, for us, we love to hike. So you can go up. We've gone up to the Snow Bowl during the summer, and we've hiked up there. And I don't know, you knew the KOA that I stayed at in my history.
I know.
I don't remember the name of the hill, but we climbed up some hill, and it was March, and there was snow at the top, knee deep snow. It was awesome.
I know. It's just, if you ever want to just check out from our 100-degree days, it's a 2-hour drive, and it is totally worth it.
And so talk about what's up there. Like you said, there's certain communities up there that you would love to be in.
I just personally, for myself, my husband and I really like Continental. It's a golf course community. A lot of our friends live in there. They already have places in there, second homes. Our goal is just to make something into a second home, but it's maybe a second home and then an investment property also for Airbnbs. We do have an Airbnb here in the Valley as well. And if you run it well, it's a great return on your investment.
All right, we're going to come back to Airbnbs because I have a lot of questions there, but let's stick with Flagstaff for a minute.
Okay.
So where's Continental? So I drive into town,
right,
and I always say, okay, drive into town, and I know that NAU's to the right, and then I kind of curve around, and downtown's to the left, and then where's Continental going to be?
Yep, Continental will be on the south side of the 40,
okay,
and it's basically just 1 mile south of it. I mean, when you're cruising west or east on the 40, you'll see the golf course and everything right there.
So that's it.
Yeah, it's a great community. The Oakmont is right there at the actual golf course. They allow for the kids to get out there and play, mess around. The food is fantastic. It's just really good vibes.
I think that's always key, right? I remember, my kids are older now, but I remember our favorite places to go are places where we could sit, relax, and enjoy a meal, and then they could go run around and get out there.
Right, and it's not going to be, you're not going to be irritating anybody. Everybody just knows that that's the mood.
And it's not 110.
Yes,
right.
It's not. No, it's probably, I think it was 85 last weekend.
Yeah, I've been on a golf course once, not with a bag of sticks in my, to swing, but to sled actually in the winter.
There you go.
So it's
excellent.
It's a lot of fun up there. I think that's what people forget is that there actually are places that have 4 seasons in Arizona.
I know.
Not just hotter and hottest.
Yeah.
And so talk about Airbnb for a second, because I think that there's a lot of people who are scared of having an investment property, but they might have stayed in Airbnb themselves and thought, oh gosh, I would love it, right? I think, anytime I go stay in an Airbnb somewhere, I'm always, looking to see what the prices of the homes are around there and imagining what it would be like, but I've always been scared of it.
Well, we turned our primary residence, the one that we have in Glendale, that was our previous home, we turned it into an Airbnb. So luckily our mortgage is low. We've owned it since 2012. Our mortgage payment's low, so our overhead isn't high. So there was a very minimal amount of risk for what was unpredictable during COVID, right? I mean, we just didn't know who was going to be traveling, what was going to be happening with that part of our economy. So we could carry both without having to be too overly concerned about it. The thing is, if your vacancy rate is what's going to kill you. So you just have to make adjustments to what your monthly or your nightly rate is based off of if you have a vacancy. If you have the entire month of October vacant, adjust your prices.
Right. And then I know that the Super Bowl is coming up. So what's that look like from an Airbnb perspective?
Well, my Airbnb is in Hillcrest, so it's at 72nd and Deer Valley. It's northwest. It's still close enough for a 20-minute commute to the stadium. So we adjusted those prices pretty high right now. We're at $3,000 a night. See if we can get it. If we don't get it, we'll make adjustments. I
keep hearing friends go, I should rent out my house for the Super Bowl, but I don't know that I'd rent out my real house, like a real Airbnb.
I don't think I could do that.
Yeah.
Because you just have to let go of any emotional connection to it.
Yeah. And it's always been odd. We've rented some like that, like for, we stayed up in Portland for a couple months and, it was someone's house. They moved out of it and we did it in New York, same thing. And it's just always weird. The guy's like, hey, my daughter forgot something, and later goes to grab some off the bookshelf, and I'm like, that's just always weird. You open a drawer and it's not just pristine; it's got a bunch of crap thrown in it. So, so there's a difference between the real Airbnb and like the historic time and what most people now think of as a business.
Right. I think if anybody stayed in an Airbnb versus a hotel, and if they have children or you got multiple households or multiple families, traveling, it's just having those amenities of a kitchen and a separate space for kids to go play. All of that makes that vacation that much better. My husband and I, we stayed in an Airbnb in Paris. We stayed in an Airbnb in Ireland. It's just, we've gotten very accustomed to it. And now we'll stay in hotels if we have to. But when we stay in those hotels, when we check out, we're like, next time it's got to be a house.
What's the average? Like, so for me, I think I'm only going to stay somewhere for like a day or two. I'm typically going to be a hotel person. Right. What do you see for people renting your Airbnb?
We don't rent it for less than 3 nights because there's really not a great return on it. We're not going to save them any money because they're going to have to pay for a cleaning deposit and cleaning fee. And it's not as cost effective if you're staying in an Airbnb for 1 night.
Yeah, it seems to me. I mean, we've mainly done it for like a month or 2 or 3 at a time. And then, but we did actually, now that you mention it, in Italy, we stayed in Airbnbs across Italy and it was amazing. And they were like, but we stayed like 5 nights in those places.
Right. That's usually about average.
Yeah. So so if somebody wants to learn about that, obviously just call you guys, reach out to the website and walk through it. Do you have any other good resources you kind of steer them towards, or is it really just best to jump on the phone with you?
I think I would like to just jump on the phone with them, but staging is crucial. Obviously the internet presence that you have, you're competing against all those other houses that are that are on the Airbnb or VRBO, and it's just whether or not it's presentable enough.
Right.
Pools are a big deal, but most people don't understand when they're coming out here that pools aren't heated. Most of them aren't.
Right.
So when they're coming out here in January, they're like, why is this pool so cold? Well, I'm sorry, it's not heated. We've made it very clear, but a lot of people get disappointed with that.
Right. That's where reviews matter, right? We've always gone by reviews for the most part where we can. And so it's always the last thing you want is a bad review because you didn't let someone know that. We don't even go to a taco joint without checking out the reviews. Right. So if you're going to actually spend thousands of dollars and stay somewhere for a week or a month or whatever, check the reviews. Yeah. If you're going to work with an agent, check their reviews. It's what we do. And do you self-manage or do you have a management company?
We self-manage because we're only about 6 miles from there.
Okay.
But we do have a cleaning company that comes through and takes care of that.
Right. And so what about somebody who wants to have a management company for that? What would that typically look like?
You're probably looking at about 10 to 15% of your overhead.
Not bad.
No, especially if you're out of state. If you're out of state or out of the city, like when I do find my place up in Flagstaff, I'll be finding somebody to manage it, even though I'm up there, once or twice a week. It won't keep it up to the standard that you would get that returning business.
Right. No, and I have to imagine because that's the last thing you want is someone to need something right away. Yeah. And you'd be able to say, I'll be there in 2 hours.
Yeah. Right.
Actually, I don't even think about having to drive there 2 hours. Yeah. That's the last thing I ever want is a phone call from a renter.
Yes. No, I agree. Yeah.
So what about long-term rentals? What's your opinion? Do you work with a lot of investors that are buying something for the long term that just doesn't want to have to do the nightly thing, but set it and forget it? What does that look like?
We're getting more and more inventory in rentals right now. And I think that's, we're kind of expecting it. Rental rates are still very competitive. So you're still looking at, for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath in Surprise, you're still looking at $1,700 a month. So it's just for an investor, yes, pick them up because there's always going to be lifetime renters, right? But if you're a tenant and you're looking to possibly think about buying, you should definitely see what it's going to take for you to get to that level. Because if not, you're paying somebody else's mortgage.
Yeah, it's interesting because you mentioned rates being higher before, and I think a lot of people are like, I'm going to wait and buy next year when rates come down. But I'm telling them, are you willing to pay a higher price for the house?
Yeah.
Higher price for the house with a lower rate still going to yield you a similar payment.
Exactly, because we're still appreciating in around 12-13% right now.
Well, and even if we appreciate 2 or 4%, it's still going to be more expensive, and I think that's what people forget. And so kind of if I circle back to that whole idea of why now, I love the idea of a renter buying, right? That's really how people build wealth. It's unfortunate. I talk to people in their 60s who never bought a house and they don't have a whole lot. They might have a little bit in their retirement, but I've talked to other people in their 20s, 30s, and 40s who bought a house in the last few years. And they've got a small little retirement if they've been fortunate enough to have a 401k, and they've got this big amount of equity that they built.
And now they can take that and put it down at their next home. The move up is fantastic for somebody because you have a substantial amount of money down. You're not worried about mortgage insurance. You get a lower rate. You got more skin in the game, and it's a great place to be. Well,
and you mentioned that you took your primary residence and converted it over to a rental. And I think that a lot of people are unaware that that's a great opportunity. And then a lot of them don't understand that they can actually use the income from your departing residence if you've got a lease in place to actually offset the cost of the mortgage.
Yeah. My Airbnb is technically paying for our primary residence. If I use that money, if I needed to, it would pay for it.
All right, say that again so people can hear it. So your Airbnb actually covers not only the cost of that mortgage, but you're making
the cost of that.
Your other mortgage.
Yeah, correct. Last year, I think we net right around 60.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty huge.
Covers your primary plus and then some.
Right. Yeah. What about we talked about the inflation piece, and you talked about rents. I think that's been the biggest part. This last one, fuel was lower, but they said housing costs, right? Rents are higher, and so I think that is a challenge for the average renter. It's amazing that how many people have come through our mortgage team this year who their landlord said, "Hey, I'm going to sell. I want to sell now," or just said, "Oh yeah, I'm going to renew, but it's going to be $500 more a month."
Yeah, and they can.
Yeah.
So as a tenant, you're just so vulnerable to somebody else dictating how your future is going to go. For me, if you have a job for at least 2 years, why not just check and see what it's going to cost you to buy a home?
Right.
Because
it doesn't even be the same job. You just have to have 2 years of employment history, right? You could have got a new job last week, but we just have to know how long you've been at 2 years. Where you work for 2 years.
How about you just keep working?
Exactly.
Everybody in the country, just keep working.
Yep.
Yes.
Even if you had a gap in COVID, believe it or not, that's a lot of industries did, and that's okay in lending.
Yeah. So home ownership is honestly the way, like you said earlier, financial wealth.
Right. All right. So you got this remarkable tablet here and you have all these notes. Like you're like prepared.
Yes.
Did we forget anything on there we're supposed to talk about?
No, I was just wanting to make sure I had.
I mean, I like that. I got my notes here. So, I think I got everything I was.
No, that was it.
That I was gonna talk about. So, thank you.
Thank you.
That was great. So, ladies and gentlemen, Cheryl Benjamin, lovingphoenix.com. Check it out.
Great.
All right, we'll see you on the next episode, everyone.
This episode is brought to you by homebuyeruniversity.net, your free comprehensive guide to buying or refinancing your home. Click over to homebuyeruniversity.net to get started online today.